Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global and Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. President Buhari urges Nigerians to give him 7 days to resolve ongoing cash crunch. And Germany approves delivery of 88 Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine as President Zelensky hosts EU summit in Kiev. Pope Francis arrives in South Sudan's capital on second leg of his latest visit to Africa. My name is Tunde Idowu. President Muhammadu Buhari has urged citizens to give him 7 days to resolve the cash crunch that has become a problem across the country as a result of the Central Bank of Nigeria policy to change high-value naira notes with new ones. He said this while meeting with the Progressive Governors Forum, who paid him a visit at the presidential villa to seek solutions to the cash crunch, which they said was threatening the good records of the administration in transforming the economy. President Buhari said the currency redesign will give a boost to the economy and provide long-term benefits. He expressed doubts about the commitment of banks, in particular to the success of the policy, noting that some banks are inefficient and only concerned about themselves. The president said he had seen television reports about cash shortages and hardship to local businesses and ordinary people, and gave assurances that the balance of 7 of the 10 days extension will be used to crack down on whatever stood in the way of successful implementation. The governors told President Buhari that while they agreed that his decision on the currency redesign was good and that they were fully in support, its execution had failed and their constituents were becoming increasingly upset. They requested the president to use his powers to direct the concurrent flourish of the new and old nairas till the end of the year. Meanwhile, in Oyo State, youths and other residents protesting hardship in the country today attacked the governor's office in Agodi area of Ibadan. Barely 22 days before the general election, youths in their numbers stormed the streets of Ibadan today to protest the current state of the nation. Nigerians have been contending with fuel, new naira note scarcity, and erratic power supply for weeks across the nation. Dissatisfied with the situation, the youth, armed with several placards, stormed the Iwo Road area of the state to register their grievances. Some protesters marched to the Oyo State Secretariat Agodi and attempted to force their way into the governor's office, but the protesters were said to have been repelled by security operatives attached to the governor's office. Not satisfied, the protesters were said to have thrown stones and other dangerous weapons into the governor's office.
Now, how will we work for a money that we suffer for? For us now to collect it from banks is problem. During the Babangida regime that they introduced new notes, we spend that new note till it collapsed. We have never seen a day that they say we should not spend new notes. How will new note will come out and they will give us just 2 months to elevate it? We are still spending old 100 naira notes now.
And here in Osun State, worried over biting fuel scarcity in the state, Governor Ademola Adeleke has announced the composition of a special monitoring team to look into the distribution and pricing challenges. The special monitoring team to be headed by the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Kasim Akinleye, with members drawn from police, DSS, Army, IPMAN, and NLC, is to immediately commence the monitoring of distribution of petrol from point of delivery by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to various discharge outlets in Osun State. In a statement by his spokesperson, Malam Olawale Rashid, Governor Adeleke further urged the monitoring team to liaise with the major marketers for collaboration with the independent marketers to ensure that products are circulated across the state. While expressing unhappiness about the hardship facing people of the state, the governor assured that the state government will support federal agencies and private sector operators to address the issue behind fuel scarcity in the state. And news after Nigeria, the German government has approved the delivery of as many as 88 Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine as President Volodymyr Zelensky hosts a summit for European Union leaders in the capital, Kiev. They will be sent to Ukraine along with the 14 newer Leopard 2 tanks that Chancellor Olaf Scholz pledged in January following pressure from the international community for Berlin to step up its supplies for Ukraine. European Council President Charles Michel and EU President Ursula von der Leyen are in Kiev for the meeting. It is the first EU-Ukraine summit since the start of the Russian invasion nearly a year ago, and the first since Ukraine gained EU candidacy status. Announcement at the summit also include doubling the training mission for Ukrainian troops to 30,000 soldiers and 25 million euros to help rid liberated areas of landmines. Air raid alerts sounded across Ukraine as President Zelensky hosted the EU leaders to discuss further sanctions on Russia and Ukraine's prospects of joining the European bloc.
Was needed a living proof that Russia is suffering a massive strategic failure, but Ukraine is withstanding and is building its path towards the European Union. Well, the fact that we are here for the 24th summit, Ukraine, European Union, amidst the war, but we are building, discussing and developing the future of Ukraine in the European Union. That is speaking more than 1,000 words. And it's very down to earth what we have done. This is, of course, also the war reality.
Earlier, Vladimir Putin compared Russia's invasion of Ukraine to the fight against Nazi Germany in a speech to mark the 80th anniversary of the conclusion of the Battle of Stalingrad. Citing Germany's decision to send tanks to Ukraine, the Russian president said history was repeating itself. Germany is one of many countries helping Ukraine defend its territory. Russia launched its bloody full-scale invasion almost 1 year ago, prompting Western countries to send weapons and aid to the government in Kiev. Speaking in Volgograd, the modern name for Stalingrad, Mr. Putin hinted that he could seek to move beyond conventional weapons.
Последующий Гитлера руками бандеровцев. Мы свои танки к их границам не посылаем. Но у нас есть чем ответить. И применением бронетехники дело не закончится. Все должны это понимать. Для тех, кто угрожает нам, видимо, для них непонятна простая истина. Весь наш народ, все мы росли и с молоком матери впитали в себя традиции нашего народа. Поколение победителей, которые своим трудом, потом и кровью создали нашу страну и передали ее нам в наследство. Стойкость защитников Сталинграда для российского воинства, для всех нас важнейший морально-нравственный ориентир. И наши солдаты и офицеры верны.
Elsewhere, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has postponed a trip to China after a Chinese spy balloon was discovered flying across the U.S. Mr. Blinken was expected to meet with his Chinese counterpart and potentially with President Xi Jinping. The visit will have come amidst fraying tensions between the two countries. China has said the balloon is used for meteorological research and deviated from its route because of bad weather. U.S. officials have said they are confident the surveillance balloon floating above the U.S. is Chinese. A statement from China's foreign ministry said it regrets the incident and will work with the U.S. to resolve the issue. Mr. Blinken's visit was expected to take place on the 5th and 6th of February. A U.S. official quoted by the Associated Press said that the decision to abruptly halt the trip was made by Mr. Blinken and President Joe Biden.
Everybody, I am sitting in my driveway here in Billings, Montana, and right now there is a ground stop on our airport, and this thing is up in the sky, and I have no idea what it is.
China today said it will fully restore travel across its borders with Hong Kong and Macau next week, dropping COVID testing requirements and daily quotas after a lengthy pandemic separation. The semi-autonomous cities both stuck to Beijing's zero-COVID strategy for nearly 3 years, splitting families, cutting off tourism and suffocating businesses. The State Council Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office said all remaining restrictions will be dropped starting midnight of February the 6th, with group stores allowed to resume. Limited travel across the borders between Hong Kong and mainland China resumed in January after Beijing abruptly axed its isolationist policy. You're watching Spring Global and Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. James Ajibolaige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution, and the People, among 6 other books. Bola Ige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba socio-cultural and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bola Ige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bola Ige as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. Pope Francis has arrived at the airport in South Sudan's capital, Juba, on the second leg of his latest visit to the continent. Thousands turned out at Juba International Airport to receive the Pope. The Catholic leader will be in the country for 3 days after having completed a 3-day trip to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The visit, alongside the Archbishop of Canterbury and the most senior figure in the Presbyterian Church of Scotland, is said it's historic and has taken years to plan. The religious leaders aim to bring hope and to encourage leaders to find a lasting peace in South Sudan, which has faced years of conflict. On the eve of a visit by Pope Francis to encourage peace in the conflict-ridden country, at least 21 people were killed in a cattle raid. Children were injured yesterday when a railing collapsed at a stadium in Sierra Leone, where the President and First Lady were distributing free sanitary pads. Videos on social media show crowds rushing out of a stadium in the city of Bo, with many carrying people who appear to be injured. President Julius Maada Bio tweeted that the medical team was working assiduously to administer medical attention to the injured. The number of casualties was not immediately clear. A statement from the government's office of the press secretary said the accident happened when a short section of metal guardrail on one of the levels of the stadium came apart. Still in Africa, a Kenyan court has sentenced to death a former policeman, Frederick Lillman, for the murder of human rights lawyer and 2 others in a case which triggered national outrage. 2 other policemen and a civilian were also sentenced to between 20 and 30 years for the murder of lawyer Willie Kimani, his client and a taxi driver, in June 2016. The 4 were found guilty of 3 counts, including murder, in July 2022. Death sentences for murder in Kenya are commuted to life in prison. However, the 2017 Supreme Court ruling gave judges discretion to decide if a death sentence can still be imposed. An army officer behind an attempted coup in 1982 was the last person to be executed in Kenya. And turning to Asia, police in Assam have arrested more than 1,800 men for marrying or arranging marriages to underage girls, launching what the Eastern Indian state's chief minister said was the start of a sustained crackdown on the practice. Iminata Biswa Sama told Reuters that police began the arrest yesterday night and more were likely, including of people helping to register such marriages in temples and mosques. They said child marriages is the primary reason behind child pregnancy, which in turn is responsible for high maternal and infant mortality rates. Marriage under 18 is illegal in India, but the law is openly flouted. Indian State Chief Minister said the Assam government has registered cases related to child marriage against 4,004 people. And talking education, a university professor in Afghanistan who is an outspoken critic of the Taliban ban on education for women and girls have been arrested in Kabul. Professor Ismail Mashal was detained while handing out free books. He rose to prominence after he tore up his academic records live on television in protest against the Taliban's ban on university and secondary school education for women and girls. The 37-year-old has been accused of provocative actions by the Taliban. Eyewitnesses reported that the professor was slapped, punched, and kicked by Taliban security forces during the arrest, but a Taliban official from the Ministry of Information and Culture said the professor was being treated well while in custody. And talking business, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif today said the International Monetary Fund was giving its country a tough time over unlocking stalled funded from a $6.5 billion bailout at a time of unimaginable economic crisis. Mr. Sharif made the comment in a meeting of civil and military leaders in the northwestern city of Peshawar. He cheered to prepare a response to Monday's mosque bombing that killed more than 100 people. He made the remarks in the context of funds the country might need for any military or counter-terrorism response to the resurgent Islamist militancy. The IMF's mission is visiting Pakistan to discuss fiscal consolidation measures the institution needs from Pakistan to clear a ninth review of its extended fund facility aimed at helping countries facing balance of payment crisis. Pakistan's central bank reserves at present stand at $3.09 billion, the lowest since 1998, and not enough to cover the cost of 3 weeks of import. Google and Apple have reported downbeat results for the last quarter of 2022 as Amazon beat expectations but warned that the coming months will be uncertain in a difficult moment for big tech. The tech titans posted earnings as shares in Meta skyrocketed a day after it reported better results than expected and signaled spending and job cuts. The results follow weeks of unprecedented layoffs round in the usually unassailable tech sector amidst pessimism about the economic outlook. Google parent Alphabet's revenue of $76 billion in its fourth quarter and profit of $13.6 billion were below what it made in the same period a year earlier, with share prices falling more than 3% in the aftermarket trade. And talking sports, boxing promoter Eddie Hearn has announced that Anthony Joshua's comeback fight will take place on the 1st of April at the O2 Arena in London. The 33-year-old is likely to fight American Jermaine Franklin, who lost on points to Dillian Whyte last November. A news conference will be held next week to officially announce the fight. Joshua has lost his last two fights, both to unified heavyweight world champion Alexander Usyk.
I think Francis Ngannou will want to and should want to move into the biggest fight possible, and there's only two of them, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Ultimately, AJ's ambition is to become world heavyweight champion again. That doesn't involve Francis Ngannou, but if there isn't an opportunity to fight for the world heavyweight title, we would be willing to explore that this summer. It's a mega fight. Obviously, it's a fight that would create huge attention worldwide. But first things first for Anthony Joshua, April 1st, O2 Arena, press conference next week.
Australian tennis star Nick Kyrgios has admitted assaulting an ex-girlfriend but avoided a criminal conviction. The 27-year-old's guilty plea in a Canberra court came after his lawyers failed to have the charge dismissed on mental health grounds. The court heard that Mr. Kyrgios pushed Chiara Passari onto the pavement during a row in Canberra in 2021. The magistrate called the incident a single act of stupidity or frustration when sparing him a criminal record. Mr. Kyrgios released a statement after ruling saying he was grateful to the court for dismissing the charges without conviction. And talking football, Arsenal forward Gabriel Martinelli has signed a new long-term contract. The 21-year-old Brazil international joined from Brazilian side Ituano in a summer of 2019 and has made 111 appearances in all competitions. He is an ever-present in the Premier League this season, scoring 7 goals to help the Gunners go 5 points clear at the top of the table. Martinelli was part of the Brazil squad for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, making 2 appearances at the Lazio reached the quarter-finals.
Club. I love everything about Arsenal. I want to stay. Yeah, I just need to get up and say.
I was born a long way from North London, but as soon as I got here, our supporters made me feel like one of them. It didn't take me long to realize this place is about more than football. It's about us, our heritage, our togetherness, and our community spirit that you have to experience to understand. Day by day, we make new memories together and feel the pride that comes from being a Gunner. I feel it every day. I feel it on the pitch. I feel it walking down the streets when someone stops me to say, "You were class this weekend, mate." So thank you, Gunners, for making me feel I'm at home. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Obviously, there will be so much excitement from Arsenal fans. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari has urged citizens to give him 7 days to resolve the cash crunch that has become a problem across the country as a result of the Central Bank of Nigeria's policy to change high-value Naira notes with new ones. The German government has approved the delivery of as many as 88 Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine as President Volodymyr Zelensky hosts a summit for European Union leaders in the capital, Kiev. Pope Francis has arrived at the airport in South Sudan's capital, Juba, on the second leg of his latest visit to the continent. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Tunde Idowu. Good evening.